A big pattern change is on the way coming up for your Labor Day weekend, but not before big time storms that are going to spark severe weather across the northern plains, the upper Great Lakes, into the Ohio Valley. Let's take a look at the setup going forward. You can see the ridge of high pressure that's actually going to be building back across the central part of the country. That's going to bring the excessive heat warnings and the heat advisories further north across the central plains and the northern plains. But at the same time, we'll be watching this pretty significant trough that will be building across the Pacific Northwest. That is going to send pulses of energy from west to east all throughout the week. And that is going to be the culprit of those severe storms that are going to unfold across the northern plains, the upper Great Lakes, and into the Ohio Valley. We'll be watching a little tutlow, kind of an easterly wave further south into the southeast that's going to be moving across from east to west, kind of an unusual direction, and that could spark some showers and thunderstorms for the deep south, those areas across South Texas. So if we expand the view, let's take a look at the overall satellite picture on the tropics, because it's still like eerily quiet across the Atlantic. Not much of anything is happening. It's really all the action is in the Pacific right now. We've got several storms. In fact, this is a hurricane that's going to continue westbound, and there's actually another storm just off my screen just heading south of Hawaii. We already have tropical storm warnings out in place, and that could actually elevate to hurricane watches as well. But all indications that system looks to stay just south of Hawaii going forward. So if we take a look at the overall what's happening on the temperature anomalies going into the weekend, there is this significant trough. You can definitely see it's got some much colder air going to be associated with it across a good part of Oregon, California, especially those areas in Nevada. They could actually even bring some summer snow into some of the higher elevations. We're talking 8,000 feet or higher. Definitely not out of the question, but you can see the heat definitely starts to build back across the good southern plains, but now it extends back into the central and northern plains with those temperature anomalies and the heat advisories extending well north as we head into late weekend into early next week. But that also is going to be the culprit, is going to fuel these thunderstorms that are going to turn severe, and it's going to have a little bit more water vapor to tap into, and definitely more energy as the heat starts to build throughout the weekend into early next week. I think it all kicks off on Sunday. So we'll be watching kind of a monsoonal flow that continues out of the desert Southwest. That'll spark more isolated showers and thunderstorms across Colorado, into Wyoming, back into Nebraska, but then have a little bit more elevated threat for severe storms, especially as we get into South Dakota, North Dakota, back into Minnesota. This area is going to have some intense Cape values associated with it, and these could be fairly extreme, folks. We're talking some pretty significant wind gusts of the 70, 75 mile per hour, and this atmosphere could support some big time hail heading into the weekend, into early next week, especially on Monday. Right now, we do in fact have that hatched risk for some big time hail, that 2-inch or greater variety, some tennis ball, maybe even some baseball hail associated with it, with the extreme Cape values that are going to be associated with this atmosphere back into the Rapid City region, Aberdeen, but especially into the Sioux Falls area, blending into Minneapolis and heading all the way even far as north as Duluth, back into La Crosse region, and then further south, more of an isolated threat, but still under the gun for some fairly significant severe storms, would include that big time large hail back into the North Platte region, even in extending into the far extreme portions of the panhandle of Texas into eastern areas of Colorado. But you can definitely see this. Look at the Cape values, folks. This is mainly the culprit of the intense heat that's going to be building back into this region on Monday. And that's what's going to be unfolding. And then the kickoff of that severe weather that's likely going to unfold on Sunday, but really amplifying heading into your Monday afternoon. So I'm definitely concerned about this severe storms, especially if you're looking at the kind of the helicity index values, fairly significant for this time of year. So these could be some fairly significant, microburst winds that could be coming out of this severe storms, and producing some fairly significant winds, some 75 miles an hour. And the atmosphere is saying, hey, we are capable of that tennis ball, maybe some even isolated baseball size hail out of this severe storm. But there it is on Sunday night. I think things get going, what complements of that monsoonal flow, we'll have the trough that's going to be digging out on the Pacific Northwest. And as these pulses of energy, these little upper level vorticities in the upper areas of the atmosphere taps into that heat, then that's going to be the culprit of producing those significant severe storms. So here's the vorticity as these move across the northern plains. You got the ridge further south, you got the cooler pocket aloft, and those are going to be moving across from west to east. So this is the one that we're mainly concerned about on your going into Monday afternoon across the Dakotas. That blends into Minnesota, and I think that actually just will extend into Wisconsin and into those areas into Michigan going into the day on Tuesday. So right now, the Storm Prediction Center does in fact have that slight risk for severe weather unfolding across Tuesday. So it's a multi-day event up further north. We're talking Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday could be pretty bumpy. So a 3-day event with significant severe storms, mainly kicking off across the Dakotas, moving through Minneapolis, and then that will extend into northeastern portions of Iowa, back into northern areas of Illinois, Chicago, in and around the Chicago region. Yes, that does include the Green Bay area, the Grand Rapids region, the Detroit region, the Cleveland region. All those areas will be under the gun with some fairly significant severe weather, and that won't be into your area until during the day on Tuesday and into the overnight hours on Tuesday, as this propagates from kind of northwest to southeast across your region. But we'll be watching after that kind of moves through. We'll be watching this cold front that's going to be kind of picking up steam. So you'll have the cooler anomalies going to start off the week where we are now across a good part of the West Coast. Those will be building across British Columbia region back into Montana, as you're still likely to get the heat still for really most of the week across a good part of the Ohio Valley and much of the Mid-Atlantic region. But you can definitely see where the cold front lies on Thursday. This would be August the 29th time frame. You've got the vorticity over the top coming across Canada, and you've got that trough swinging in from the northwest, and that will propagate a fairly decent sized cool front for August standards that will be highlighted across Colorado by then, getting into Kansas as this moves from northwest to southeast. But what it's going to do, it is going to be bringing some significant changes for most of those areas that haven't had really much of a reprieve most of all month long across those areas across the south, and bring some much needed rain. So we're talking your areas in New Mexico, into Texas, into Oklahoma, back into portions of Missouri. Those areas could get into the action of some isolated showers and thunderstorms, and bring much cooler temperatures by the time we head into Labor Day weekend. So we're still dealing with the heat for most of the week, but I do feel a fairly decent sized cool front will come down from the northwest down to the southeast and bring those at least 5 to 10 degrees below average. So most of these areas, we're talking in the low 90s or even the 80s for a good chunk of Oklahoma and Texas, Missouri, back into Arkansas. Yeah, those areas will get into the action of the cooler air, and definitely a respite of what you've been seeing of what those triple digit temperatures that have just been almost endless, and those heat advisories, heat warnings. Much cooler air is going to be on the table for your Labor Day weekend going into September 1st. Those cooler anomalies continue to drift further south. Yes, we're talking those areas into central Texas, even South Texas will start to cool off at least a little bit. You're not going to be in the triple digits anymore. That will drift into Louisiana and back into Mississippi. Definitely some welcome cooler air going to be on the table, and some rain showers, right? These areas further south really hasn't had that much. So if you live along the coast, earlier in the week, you're going to be having some chances with that easterly wave that will be propagating from east to west, kind of an unusual direction. But then later in the week, you'll be watching for the cold front coming in from the north, going through Oklahoma on Friday, but then heading into Texas by the time we head into Saturday, and extending into further South Texas, heading into Sunday, bringing those cooler temperatures and some much needed rain across that picture. So by the time you head into your Labor Day, yeah, it's going to be looking significantly different. There's not going to be any heat advisories, heat warnings out there in place, just a little bit respite, cool down, and a brief taste of fall for those areas across a good part of the South that hasn't really experienced any much of cooler air for a while. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch me next update. Why I protect you before and after storms.